Our executive editor Palki Sharma Upadhyay is on ground zero covering all the latest updates. She joins us live from the Russia-Ukraine border. Now, my first question to you, Palki, you have been reporting for us from Kiev for weeks now. You are currently reporting, in fact, from a very sensitive area, gauging public sentiment during the conflict. What's your assessment of what's happening on ground?
I'm at the Senkivka border checkpoint, and this site where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle in case Russia decides to invade Ukraine. Because to my right is Belarus. This road leads to Belarus. The border is right behind where we are standing. And to my left is Russia. And where we are is Ukraine. In front of me you see the last Ukrainian village on the northern side, which is Senkivka. So this is a very, very significant spot. A former defense minister of Ukraine recently said that the 600-mile-long border between Ukraine and Belarus is a high-risk zone. And we went here today to see what was happening, because on the other side of the border, I'm sure you know that Russia and Belarus are conducting drills. They have S-400 missile systems, Su-35 fighter jets, Iskander missiles, tanks, all sorts of military deployment, and 30,000 troops. And so this is a very sensitive zone. The border guards who are stationed here are prepared, they say, for whatever is coming. They've always operated under the shadow of war, and they understand the risks involved, but they are standing steady. We were given a tour of this area, and a lot of places are out of bounds, you would understand, because of security concerns. There were vast stretches of land where we told we could not step on because there were landmines. But this is the last Ukrainian village. This is a border checkpoint beyond which we have Russian territory.
Right. Now, Palki, there are also multiple narratives about the current conflict that are ongoing globally right now. The US, of course, is warning Americans to leave Ukraine, warning of the crisis escalating. How will all this impact the ongoing tensions between Russia and the West?
Well, Joe Biden's statement and his administration's assessment becomes more dire by the day. When we began this week, we were telling our viewers about American intelligence assessments that said that Kiev could fall within 48 to 72 hours, that there might be 50,000 civilian casualties, 25,000 troop casualties on the Ukrainian side. This was American assessment. They could not give any specific details on how they arrived at those numbers, but that's what they said. Now, in this past week, we've seen the U.S. president repeatedly say that American citizens should evacuate. This is the time to leave. And he's made a very important statement today where he says that he is not going to send U.S. troops to evacuate citizens because he's been giving them enough warnings. And he says we're facing one of the biggest militaries in the world, i.e. the Russian military, and things could, quote unquote, go crazy at any time. And that does not instill a lot of confidence in the people here. But if you talk to the people of Ukraine, they say that they're hoping there is not going to be a war, and they're confident in their forces, and the spirits remain high.
Absolutely. Now, there have been some updates in this conflict, of course. More information is trickling in, Palki. Recent satellite images, in fact, show more Russian deployment. What's your take on the same? Will this create more fears in the region, especially of an invasion?
That is concerning. We've seen Russian warships in the Black Sea. We've seen newer images coming out. So that is one thing that remains a constant, you could say, Priyanka, that Russian deployments continue to go up, even as Russia says that it does not want a war. It is adding more troops. It is adding more in terms of military equipment and encircling Ukraine. And that remains a point of concern. At the same time, we understand that there is still room for talks, because the latest Russian statement says that they're not happy with U.S. troop deployments in Europe. They say that is not acceptable, and they are going to push for the Minsk Accords in the United Nations Security Council, that meeting that is scheduled for the 17th of February. And that gives one hope that talks are still going to continue, even though Europe's shuttle diplomacy has not delivered any results. And even while there are war clouds hovering over this region, you see that trucks are still passing. This is a very sensitive border. There are checks happening at every point, but commerce has not stopped, and that gives people some hope.
Right. Now, Palki, you're obviously in Kiev, in Ukraine. You've been getting us all the updates from ground. But I think the biggest question as of now is what's going on in the minds of the Ukrainian people? Are they fearing the worst at the moment?
There is tension, and that is undeniable. Everyone you speak to says that there is no telling what Vladimir Putin does and which way the Russians will go. And everyone is aware of the fact that the Russian military is very big. It could overwhelm the Ukrainians if they so desire. Russia has put everything on the table. The fact that their president came out and said that while NATO forces are very big, at the same time the world must remember that there will be no winners in this war, and that Russia is a nuclear power. So those threats are very much there. The hope here in Kiev is that diplomacy delivers and not tanks. But at the same time, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has made it very clear that none of these compromises are going to come at the cost of Ukraine's sovereignty. When the Europeans push for Minsk Accords, the government in Kiev says that the implementation of that agreement will not happen on Russia's terms. So both sides standing firm, and a war, as Vladimir Putin himself said, is going to be unwinnable for all sides involved. So it is not in anyone's interest.
Right, absolutely. Palki Sharma Upadhyay, our executive editor, joining us from Ukraine. Thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION.